What's up, everybody? Paul Hickey here, Sports Card Strategy Show. Paul Hickey here with the Sports Card Strategy Show. I've got Kendall McKee and Paul Fisher with me, and we are excited to talk about a lot of stuff today. So thank you for joining us on the live feed. Guys, good to see you. How's everybody doing today? Kendall, what's up with you, man?
I'm all right. The wife just got sick today, but I got a lot of stuff done, and we are at a 2 p.m. time instead of like early morning. So I've like already had my productive day, and now I'm just ready to talk cards.
Nice. Paul Fisher, how you doing, my man? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. It's a big week, Canada Day week here up north of the border. So got a couple
Canada
days.
Day.
Yeah, a couple days, and then Friday we get the day off. So maybe get a little golf in and just hammer it out here for the next 4 days, and then a little fun.
Nice. Happy Canada Day.
Thank you.
I am in the United States, as many of you know, and so it's a little bit different setup for me. Kendall said my face was close to the camera. I think he's right. I played golf today as well, so I'm excited about being able to do that, and got back just in time for the show. So I'm ready to talk some cards, and we're in episode 38 today. So we are rolling along. We've got a lot to talk about, and thank you for everyone joining us. We're going to take audience questions throughout the show. We've had some good live interaction on the live broadcast. And then for those of you listening on Spotify and Apple, you know, you can hit us up on the Facebook group. You can comment on the YouTube videos. And of course, you can tweet at No Offseason Card or at Lefty McKee. If you have any questions and you weren't able to catch the live broadcast, we'd love to still interact with you on Twitter or on Instagram at Sports Card Strategy and at Lefty McKee. So we've got our main man, Paul Fisher, on the show today. He's a subscriber to the Sports Card Investment Report at nooffseason.com. For those of you who haven't checked that out, you can save 20% using the promo code NOOFFSEASON. And Paul is very knowledgeable. He actually helps me kind of as an unpaid consultant as well, which I appreciate. And so Kendall and I like to have him on the show to get his perspective. And so actually, I want to jump into the first topic with Paul and talk to both Paul and Kendall about this, obviously. But Paul Fisher kind of emailed me and said, is now sort of the time to be strategically greedy, quote unquote, in a down market, right? So we all know the market's down. No one's going to deny that. No one's going to sugarcoat it. But there are some areas of the sports card market that are still doing well, of course. And there are areas of the sports card market where there potentially are some concerns. But before we get into any concerns, let's talk about maybe some opportunities. So, Paul, do you want to lead us off with where your head's been at recently with some opportunities in sort of the dip that we've had recently in the sports card market?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, obviously, most assets are down right now. You hear in Canada in particular, like we've noticed the real estate market's very, very quickly downturned. At least 15%. We haven't seen this in 20 years up here. So coupled with stock market declining, Bitcoin, it's no surprise that, you know, asset classes are like sports cards are, you know, potentially falling knives right now. So, you know, I've been certainly looking at my own collection and thinking about, you know, is there some stuff that it's, you know, it's maybe time to book a loss and move on from. And as I see everything decline, you know, you see opportunities where you're like, wow, that's a card that I would want to sit on that for 10 years, or I believe in that 20 years down the line, that's something that's going to be worth a heck of a lot more than what I'm seeing it at right now. Now that's super hypothetical, right? Because, you know, the reality is that the whole industry could go to zero. There's no intrinsic value to a sports card. It's not like real estate where you've got, you know, a rental income stream and you value the income stream, or a company that's got, you know, dividends and free cash flow and things like that. It's, you know, sports cards are like art, and they're fun as well. But with that being said, there's cards in particular in the vintage market that there is a long data set that supports that over a period of time that they actually produce greater returns than being in investment classes like stocks and real estate. So, I think that it's one of those times to think like, do you prune your portfolio of cards and maybe get rid of some of that junk or some of that stuff that you don't really, it doesn't mean anything to you personally? And is there something that, that you can buy in a falling market that you believe in long term? The reality is the market could go down 15, 20%. It's really hard to time the bottom of a market as well. If you try and time the bottom of a market, you're never going to get that right either. So I think it's one of those things where you've got to be thinking like, I don't know, sports cards, it's what's long-term anyways, but I think you have to be thinking longer term than what you have been thinking over the last couple of years. And, that's probably going to be different goats. Like it's Jordan stuff, it's Mantle, it's Gretzky. I'd be actually a little bit concerned about the Brady market. It's, maybe LeBron, Tiger. Obviously, the Tiger market's been probably one of the most stable markets out of any athlete over the downturn. Golf is actually still, it's about flat when everything else is down 15 to 20%. So, it's one of those things. I'm seeing opportunities in cards that I've loved for a long period of time. Kobe 96 finest gold refractor. I love that card. That card to me is, that's like one of my favorite cards of all time. This is, these guys right here, the Nike Jordan card, PSA 10s, like I'm buying. I think that this card's worth 20 grand right now. That's what I believe in my heart. Is it actually? No. But if I see this card below what I think it's worth,
You're talking about the Air card that Kobe has?
Yeah, the gold one.
Yeah, like where it says Air in the top.
Yeah, like that refractor, like
that card is sick.
That's a killer card. Like I'd be happy to look at it every day. And if that reminded me, if it declined 15%, I looked at that card every single day, and it made me like think about Kobe and what Kobe meant to me personally. Like, I mean, when he died, that drove me to build my business. I thought about him every single day. I carried a tribute book to Kobe in my laptop bag every single day. That's the type of stuff I think on a go forward basis we all need to think about when it comes to sports cards. It's, it's not about flipping is tough. It's going to be tough in a down market. Like, it's probably just falling knives, flipping cards. It's going to be stuff that you want to put into a personal collection and, something that you believe that a collector would pay more for in the future, right? Like that's ultimately what drives the value of a sports card is, would a collector pay more for this in the future than what I paid for it now? That's your bet now.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm fully on board with what you're talking about. And I've actually been engaging in this sort of dialogue in my own heart for a while. I think when I first bought the Mike Trout finest or the Mike Trout Bowman Chrome, that was like my first one that I was like, this is the card I've been looking for forever. And of course it wasn't, the Kobe PSA 10 range financially, but for me, it was focusing on less prospects, less trying to flip on, debuts and all that kind of stuff, and more like a long-term hold type thinking. And I've since been trying to run down a Gretzky rookie, and like the blue border one. I just think that card is sick. And I'm not even a massive hockey fan. I did watch every Stanley Cup game. And I watched all the Oilers games when they were in the playoffs, because since you got me on, Connor, like I have only watched the Oilers. So, that's your fault, Paul. So thanks. But I am like pushing that direction. I would love to have more Kobe cards. I've got several, but nothing to that, to that end. Yeah, I think I'm pushing more towards GOATs in this season. I just went to a card show on Saturday where I set up and sold cards. And, previously I would have been like, no, I don't want to move guys like I had a Jeremy Pena card, who's a shortstop for Houston, potentially going to win Rookie of the Year. I put it out on the table. That would have been a hold for me previously, but I put it out there and I sold it on Friday. So I am moving cards that I typically would have just, held, and I moved it for pretty much what I got it for. But I'm just concerned right now with the market that all things are going down. So I'm kind of trying to like hedge my bets a little bit, and then potentially move that money into some GOAT cards that are going to appreciate over a long period of time.
Yeah, it's no different. It's like the stock market too, right? In periods of recession or down periods in the market, typically, it's the crafts, it's the utilities, it's the safer plays that typically would perform better. I think cards, you got to look at it the exact same way. Your GOATs are going to be your safer plays. And maybe this is time for all of us to reconsider like more of our portfolio theory when it comes to building expectation as to what you're doing with investing money in cards, right? Like most people, as they age, they're moving their money into, we'll call it safer stocks. If they're younger and want to take more risks, they build a portfolio theory in and around maybe more tech. I think you could apply some of these metrics to sports cards, right? And if your expectation is to get rich quick in sports cards now, like I kind of think that's over. It's, the 2-year bubble of this industry during COVID and, tons of money being pumped into economic markets. Like it's over. The world's moved on. Now we've got to deal with the problem of inflation in economies around the world and supply chain and wars and things like that. It's back to getting into thinking like a regular investor would, and those metrics can be applied to sports cards for sure.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying. Hey, a little clear in the throat there, guys. Sorry about that. It's 1:16 p.m. for me, and not I don't know. Normally it would be we'd be doing the show at about 5 p.m. for me, so the body's adjusting to the time. Sorry about that. But yeah, I think you guys are right on. And my personal experience and my sort of investment portfolio breakdown plan is going to look pretty similar to what you guys are talking about, which is just less prospecting. I think that like my prospects will probably come from wax that I open, and then I'll sell them. But in terms of going out and buying singles of prospects, I think that it's probably not going to be my main focus. Kendall wearing the Pirates hat makes me want to share a little bit of an anecdote that I think is a good thing. We've talked a lot about O'Neal Cruz on the show, and I think it's relevant to bring him back up again because he got his call up, and we had Chase Krim from Texas Roadshow Shop on last week, and I asked Chase, what do you think I should do with O'Neal Cruz? Should I sell on the hype of the call up? And he kind of made the comment, well, I don't know if there's going to be any call up hype. I think it was a fair comment, but I went ahead and listed it anyway. And I've had more views and watchers and bids on this O'Neal Cruz PSA 10 2016 prospect auto. And it's almost at $900 right now. And there's still 2 days left in the auction. And I paid probably below $550 for it. So I think that it's premature to say that you can't prospect anymore, but I am listing, to Kendall's point, like I am listing that and not waiting for him to do more. Like I'm the greedy part of being like, where maybe last year I would have been like, oh, let's see if he's the next Tatis, or let's see, let's see how much I can squeeze out of this. Now I'm kind of like, well, moment, list it, move on. And then to Paul's point, put that money, if I'm putting that money back into cards, I'm putting it into probably like a safer long-term investment, like a GOAT, saving up for a GOAT card, trading up into a GOAT card, something like that. So I think we're all saying the same thing there. Not that it's a horrible time for the sports card market, but just a time to really shift our thinking and our strategy, which I think is good. And the sports card investment report at No Offseason will reflect that. I think I'll talk a little bit later in the episode about some changes I made this week to kind of reflect that a little bit. But what do you guys think about, just have we seen the numbers in the hobby grow? I think of like our guy Andy Kaysen from the Football Card Strategy show, and he looks a lot at social media metrics. And I feel like looking at the metrics and the action on Facebook groups around sports card trading, Twitter, sports card trading, Instagram, all these different not just the eBay comps, which we'll get into. I want to get into that with Paul in a minute, eBay comps and PWCC comps and things like that. But just the action and the numbers, do you guys feel generally safe that the hobby has enough serious collectors in it to where the demand is still going to be there for like long-term stuff that we're talking about?
I got some real questions about the high-end market. Like, I mean, I think that over the last couple of years, crypto, and there was some serious dough of people that realized returns in crypto and moved that over to the sports card industry, right? And that's, you know, chasing cards and doing big breaks. And, you know, the ultra modern segment of sports cards is probably hurting the most out of anything. I would have some serious reservations if that money is sticking around for long term, and if that can support the higher end. I don't know. I'd be pretty negative about that. If I was betting for the next, you know, 5 years, I don't know if I would be particularly bullish on the high end being supported, especially high end modern.
Okay, Kendall, what do you think?
Yeah, I would disagree, actually. I think with Fanatics coming into the space, they have, like way more draw to pull attention into sports cards. And I think with the pull they have with just the email listings alone is like, I think it's like 12 times the amount of people that are in the space currently. I think it's around 18 million or something like that, that they have the just already previous buyers. And if that alone transfers over, I think we'll see a market cap grow, especially if we're talking. And now you're Paul, you're speaking specifically to high end cards. Yeah. I think I'm specifically speaking to overall market cap, which is probably lower end cards.
I'm talking 6-figure plus cards. You know,
yeah. So that's honestly a topic I can't even talk about because I have no experience in. So. But I think the overall market cap is going to continue to grow over the next 10 years. But I think it will take some strange turns. And I think it will, we'll see like metas come out that are typically around the Gen Z Web3 space rather than physical card markets. I don't know how that'll play in. I think the addition of crypto and NFTs and Web3 and all that metaverse type stuff has a play in the market somewhere. And I don't know where it kicks off. And I think that Candy's didn't really go like I wanted it to. Candy, if you guys are familiar with what I'm talking about, the NFTs, MLB and NFTs didn't exactly go like I wanted it to. I don't really know how that plays in over the next 5 to 10 years, but I do think it does have some sort of element of play in the overall card market. And so, but yeah, 6-figure cards and overall market cap are totally two different. So,
yeah, this is a really interesting. It's going to be a fun time for the hobby. It's changing, it's evolving. This is a hobby that changes. It evolves very, very quickly. One of the things I'm watching is, I think there's too many grading companies. I think PSA has to take the whole market and buy Beckett. I think Beckett, the fact that they're kind of hanging on by a thread, I think it actually hurts things overall. PSA needs to get more grading offices. I'm watching China really, really close right now. Like, I think if PSA can penetrate China, and
are they a public company?
Yeah, well, they were bought out by Steve Cohen, so I believe they're private now, Collectors Universe. But obviously there's going to be some AI that comes. So PSA has bought an AI company. They're talking about potentially having almost like kiosks that you can go get your cards graded at by AI technology. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big thing for the hobby. Like, I mean, China's market for the NBA is larger than it is in North America, right? It's hockey's growing 10x in China over the last couple of years, and they're projecting that hockey is going to be like one of the fastest growing sports in China over the next couple of years. Like, that's positive stuff. That's really, really positive stuff for the industry, but you have to make it accessible, right? Like, the only way that can happen is if PSA opens 10 offices in Japan and China, and cards get graded over there, because the way the process works right now, like, there's just, people from China aren't sending their cards to North America to get graded and then to have them sent back. And it's difficult. Like, I don't believe that there's like this super easy flow of sale transactions, whether it's auction house or eBay, from North America to China. So like, I think things like that speak volumes to the potential for long-term growth, but there's going to have to be some things that happen to get it there.
Do you think shares of expensive cards will still be like, I know that kind of came out like a year or two ago. Do you think that potentially is going to figure out some of the geographic problems that you're referencing?
I like that space. I think that's a cool way. I mean, with like things like the vault, right? Whether it's golden or PWCC, like, people are already not putting cards in their hands. Like, if I'm buying a big card, I kind of want to touch it, but it's trending towards that you're sending them to a vault. So what's the difference between sending a card to a vault or having fractional ownership in something, right?
Absolutely.
Like, to me, it's kind of the same. So, I mean, if I could get access to buying like a percentage of something that I think is super cool, and and at least I get the brag piece that I own a very, very small percentage of it, I could be tempted to do that. I mean, if I'm never going to see it and touch it, I'm not seeing and touching anything sitting in my vaults right now. So what's the difference, right? If I can get access to owning something, or a very, very small fractional ownership piece of something that's extremely cool, I would definitely look into it, especially if I thought there was big time upside in it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that like going back to what I said previously, I think that's a pretty close, like not a far jump from like, oh, my cards are all in my vault, to, oh, I just have NFTs,
and that's like, I think about like a community like Sports Card Strategy. Like, I sometimes think in my mind, it'd be hilarious, like, if we all grouped together and said, hey, we're going to take a vote, and everyone's going to chip in $100, and we're going to go buy a $20,000 card and cheer it on together. And I think there's going to be like communities driven towards stuff like that, right? Like, what's a couple $100 to everyone if it meant that as a community we could be a part of something and all enjoy it? Like, maybe there's a side of the hobby that turns into community driven as well, right?
Yeah, I really like that. I think that could be fun, and I would definitely be down. So just real quick, I want to give a shout out to Cool Arrow, who's watching and commenting. Thank you for interacting with us on the show. We love this. And they've made a few comments here that I've put up on the screen while you guys have been talking, and it's good to know. I mean, everybody's got a different experience in the hobby, and it seems like Cool Arrow's experience is still that they're still finding ways to flip and make money. So I think that, like, that's great, because a lot of time, like, not that what Paul and Kendall are saying isn't totally legit. It is. Don't get me wrong, but I do think, like, I've always been skeptical of kind of the headlines everywhere in every aspect of life, and so I like that people are still having flippable wins, right? I mean, and while the macro is down, that doesn't mean that you can't find ways to make money.
Oh, absolutely. That's where you do make money.
So it's no different. It's like venture capital, right? Like, I mean, there's venture capitalists that are putting money into tech companies that are going up in value right now. But for every one that goes up, there might be 5 that go down. It's prospecting with sports cards is the exact same thing right now. I got a box full of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander stuff here that's down 90% right now. Like, I might as well just give it to a kid down the street and say, go enjoy these, get into the hobby. Is a great Canadian
play. I'm a Thunder fan, so if you want to,
I don't know. He was on my list of guys to talk about post NBA draft. So we'll get to him later in the show for sure. But yeah, I think that Cool Arrow actually makes another good point here. They're just kind of saying that, in this time frame that we're in right now, this it could, and I remember Chase saying this last week too, to take losses on cards, like maybe it's your SGA cards, Paul, is one thing to do, or is there an opportunity to trade? Is there an opportunity to trade an ultra modern card or a bunch of ultra modern cards for a more reliable GOAT level type card? And if you can maneuver your way out of cards that people won't buy, but maybe they'll trade for, or at least they won't buy at the price that you thought that you could sell it for, but somebody will trade for it, there's ways to actually trade into something that maybe then you can flip. So it's more action, it's more effort. And I know, Paul, for a guy like you, there's a lot of people like you that, don't really want to put themselves in a position where they have to make multiple transactions to make money. Like I know you'd rather be like the fewer transactions, the better. So I think that lends itself to your higher end strategy. Whereas Kendall and I are kind of examples of people who are maybe doing more transactions or willing to make more transactions to figure out a way to profit from it. So I think to your own, basically.
I was going to say, like, to your point there, I think the way the industry is going, though, you're going to have to roll up the sleeves and get a little dirty. You're going to have to work harder to make money. Like what was my strategy the last couple of years? It worked. I actually don't think it works anymore. So that's like, I'm having to reevaluate what that means for me to be able to stay in cards and make money at this. Like, to their point about trading, and like, I might have to go to shows. There's not a ton of shows here in Canada, but like, I think I might actually have to look at, consolidation of maybe some of my GOAT cards into bigger GOAT cards, right? Like, the way transaction fees are going and whatnot, like the bigger cards, they're expensive to sell as well, right? So it's not always the best strategy to sit on something for a period of time and then try and sell it. The 20% that the auction house takes that wipes out any profit you're making anyways.
Yeah. All right. So another topic that I wanted to talk to you guys about, I think it's a good time to segue into this, is buying retired stars and grading at PSA is back, I believe. I'm interested to your guys' take on this, but to me, with the $30 value opening again, and I want to clarify actually something, because I think 2 weeks on the show, 2 weeks ago on the show, I said that when the value opened, that the clock wouldn't start until they got through the backlog. And then I actually put that out in a tweet, and PSA tweeted back PSA DM'd me and said, could you please clarify this? Actually, the clock starts as soon as we mark your package as arrived in our system. So the 120-day clock actually does start now. And so I did go ahead and submit at the $30 level some cards, and the clock's already started. So to me, now that PSA value is back, if you're out at shows, like Kendall just went to a show, Paul before the episode started live mentioned to me the Toronto show. I'm curious to your guys' thoughts around what I believe is a good strategy right now for the summer. Going to shows, going to shops, maybe trying to see cards that could be gradable, that could grade well, seeing them in person, buying them raw. If it's a deal, if you can get it for a discount, or maybe buy them in bulk, buying lots, does it make sense to buy lots or cards in bulk? That now that this PSA value level is open again, is that something you guys are looking at?
I think here for us, like I've been reading a lot that there is like this massive glut of hockey cards sitting in Canada that are in shops or, collections that are all ungraded. I think there's definitely some sort of strategy in the hockey market to go out and buy lots, go visit your local card store. And, if you have a keen eye for being able to see stuff that could potentially grade well with PSA, or even if you want a quick turnaround with HGC to potentially be able to, if you're worried about the backlog at PSA, I mean, PSA is always going to be the strongest return based off the brand value of PSA. I would say definitely here in Canada, there's a hockey play for sure that could be done there.
That's awesome. And even in Kendall, before you go here, I just want to bring up kind of specifically, a lot of people went out and were really after the Jordan 86 Fleer, and almost to the point where it kind of became a little bit overpumped in the market the last 2 years. And so the value, I think, came down of that card quite a bit. But even a card like that, now there's so many fakes. That's the problem, is there's so many fakes and reprints and stuff. So I think you have to be careful, but I'm just sort of noticing the difference in pricing between the legends, the retired stars, raw, and the PSA 8s, 9s, and 10s. they're now back to where you can even get a profit. Like you wouldn't get a profit off an 8, but you would, if you feel like it's going to be somewhere between an 8 and a 10. I feel like there's a lot of plays for legends and retired stars to go out and get. And who cares about the 121-day turnaround? Like you can wait 3 or 4 months because the guy's retired. So it doesn't really matter. And that's kind of what I like about it. Whereas SGC, I don't know that I would go SGC anymore, just strictly because the quicker turnaround time doesn't matter with the particular play I'm talking about. And then with the PSA slab that it's going to increase the value. I think you could, with the Jordans though, I know, and some of the others, I know you're going to risk maybe some fakes and stuff, but if you can figure out a way, I know there's some authentication services that are sometimes at shows. The name of them is escaping me right now, but I know there's a company, I think out of Texas, Kendall, that is authenticating cards at the Dallas Card Show, for example. Yep. And then, and I think it's like 10 or 15 bucks. So like, why wouldn't you?
It's a cool company too.
Try to do cool that, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, Paul, that's interesting on the hockey card stuff too. I could see definitely time for some hidden gems on that. If any of the audience wants to have some fun or is having some fun thinking about doing that, we'd love to hear from you on it. So Kendall, what do you think about this topic in terms of, is it something that you're hesitant to do for any reason, or is it something that you think that people can generally feel good about, a strategy of say picking a retired star or even GOAT and trying to go raw and grade at PSA? What do you think?
My biggest fear is a fake. It's really popular in old cards. Also trimming is really popular in old cards. And I honestly have no idea how to find that out with my naked eye, and so like, it's even harder to find that, through eBay or something like that, like, I mean, you don't even know if it's the original picture, like, which speaks to the fungibility of it, like, which I don't know. I'm really nervous about this. As I think I'm dipping my toes there personally. I'm still really, really concerned with the amount of fakes or deep fakes. Like people legitimately think it's an 86 Fleer, and even other grading companies think it's an 86 Fleer. And then you send it over to Crossover and you find out it's not. Like, oof, like I know HGA got in some issues early on because they were grading some fakes, and they were grading them as legits. And then like people spent, 6 figures on some Fleer cards that were fake, I guess, or altered or I just, that whole thing makes my hands sweat, like just, I'm getting anxious just thinking about it, and I would have to know somehow if it was authenticated. So I would need that Dallas Buyers Club or Dallas, whatever it's called. I think it's DSI or whatever it is. I know which company you're talking about. I just don't have the name off the top of my head, but like I would pay 20 extra bucks in some sort of finding fee of saying like, hey, I'm interested in buying your card, but I would need to send it to a authenticator first.
Yeah. Like I would pay like 15 to 20% of the card to the dealer at the show just to be able to take it over to the table and have it authenticated or something. And then, something like that. But
I mean, they're gonna think you're disrespecting them too. It's just like, no, it's nothing on you. Like you might have bought a fraudulent card and not realized it, which honestly, then they're gonna get even more upset that you're saying like, it's a really sticky subject.
But you know what I think the more likely situation is, and this comes with risk as well, but I think the more likely situation in this is to buy someone's old collection through like Facebook Marketplace or something like that, where, and I'm not telling everybody to go out and do that, but I did have a couple positive experiences last year with people on Facebook Marketplace. So for example, listing an entire set of 1987 Fleer basketball, listing an entire set of 1988 Fleer basketball, and being able to kind of get them down to a price that made sense, to where knowing that, okay, the Jordans, and then in the 88 set, you've got the Pippen and the Stockton and the Reggie Miller rookies. And so I just think like some of those plays are back for basketball. Sounds like Paul with hockey, maybe they are as well, where if you go and if you're buying someone's entire collection or a lot from someone, to me, that's less, the risk is more in the condition of the card and it's less in the authenticity of the card, I think, at that point. So, all right, guys, cool. Let's move into another topic that Kendall and I wanted to talk to Paul about, which is, we talk about sales data all the time. Everybody does. We talk about market movers, where you can get your first month for only $1 by using the promo code no off season. We've had a lot of positive feedback on market movers. And a lot of people use Card Ladder. We talked about Alt last week with Chase from Texas Roadshow Shop. And then there's also like Kendall sells on Loop with Wild Cards Box Breaks with his partner T. They sell on Loop. They sell, and so there's card shows, there's Facebook groups and where buying and selling happen all the time. So my point is, in its nature, to just look at eBay alone isn't the full picture. And then on top of that, there's all these other marketplaces, MySlabs, PWCC. We start pulling in data at the Sports Card Investment Report from MySlabs and PWCC, which I think is a good idea because I think the more ways our audience can see people selling cards, the better. But then Paul's brought up some good points about just the reliability of the data. And so, Paul, I'll let you kind of take it from here on. I won't steal your thunder, but you go ahead and tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly of what you found out about this stuff.
Yeah, so it's I consigned for the first time to PWCC the Premier auction a few weeks ago, and took some pretty heavy losses. Obviously, it's hard to. This is the first time losing money on big cards for me, so it made me really start thinking about like what went wrong here. Like this is interesting. There's obviously a learning curve sometimes, but a moment of self-reflection to say, okay, like I got to slow down, analyze why this happened, and then what are the implications from what happened, and what did I learn? So, the more and more I've actually kind of gone down this gopher hole, the more and more I actually get a little bit worried about some of the things that I'm seeing. One thing, I've been a very devout Card Ladder person for the last year. With it being owned by Collectors Universe, I guess maybe I thought like, hey, this is really, really legit stuff. Like it's the same company that owns PSA. They own Golden Auctions. Like this must be, really, really, really legit. So when the data from PWC Premier came in, I was really surprised because it takes a long time to get paid out from what you consign. So I was looking at the comps from the auction, and all of a sudden they're all listed on Card Ladder. And I think, well, that's really interesting because I bought a couple cards at the auction, which, ultimately I hadn't paid for yet. So why is that being posted? And vice versa. I know my card hasn't been paid for. So why is it also being posted as a comp? So that's suspicious to me. Like, that's a piece of data that is, basically being booked as a comp, and to the average naked eye, the person wouldn't know that it actually isn't a transaction that's been completed. So got me looking a little deeper. And, it's quite concerning actually when you peel away the onion. So Card Ladder's been taking data feeds from PWCC, data feeds from eBay, and creating comps. I started looking at some of the cards that I lost money on. In particular, one was an Exquisite Steph rookie card, an auto, 9.5. And I'm starting to look back through some of the sales history in Card Ladder, and I'm seeing, okay, so that card, that's not a card that transacts very often. That's a fairly high dollar value card. That was, 6 months ago, that was a $35,000 card. Okay, that's very interesting. So it sold in April, and then 14 days later, it sold again. Well, okay, like let me go back and search eBay search history for sales history. Oh, wow, that's the same card. oh, well, it just wasn't paid for. And now there's two comps. Wow. I actually looked at that comp, the $25,000.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's down from 35. That's a good buy. It wasn't paid for at 25. It was paid for at 21. So
that's really hard to
so
determine.
all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I been doing? I've been so devout to Card Ladder, looking at all of these comps that have been posted. And I've been looking at this as, these comps must be real. It's this is owned by Collectors Universe. This must be real. And I'm starting to think, wow, okay, this is not good. So I reached out to PWCC.
Uh-oh.
So Paul reached out to PWCC. He's frozen a little bit.
Sorry.
He's back.
Yeah, you're good. You're back.
Reached out to PWCC.
Reached out to PWCC's management team and said, hey, what's going on here? You guys are feeding data to Card Ladder? What are you talking about? We're feeding data to Card Ladder. They just take it from us. Oh, that's interesting. So that's not a data feed, and they're just taking that information and posting it as a comp. Are you sure that's the actual case? Oh, okay, well, let me ask someone else a little bit higher up. And the escalation kept going higher up. Oh, no, this is something we're working on in our back-end development. Eventually, we're going to have a data feed whereby, we'll send information on stuff that isn't paid for, and there'll be a little star on it. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. So Card Ladder, and you have been talking to the point where it's in your development system. So if that's the case, why wouldn't Card Ladder go to eBay to ask for the same data feed to set up an infrastructure whereby anything that wasn't paid for or shilled or anything like that, there would be a real data feed from eBay to Card Ladder? So if they were able to have that conversation with PWCC, why weren't they able to have that conversation with eBay? So I don't know. I think that there's some very suspicious stuff going on in and around Card Ladder. I've reached out to Nat Turner at Collectors Universe. I'm waiting for a response. I think this is a very dangerous thing for the hobby. If there's situations whereby, especially at the very high end, there's been comps of cards that have not been paid for, and people are making investment decisions in and around data feeds that they're supposedly, supposed to feel comfortable with. And all of a sudden we're learning that Card Ladder's been booking comps of stuff that didn't actually transact. We got a real problem. That's going to be very ugly to figure out, because that's going to lead to significant losses for people if they've made decisions based off of what they've religiously used.
Yeah, and you even said, like, you did your research based on that Steph Curry card being a good deal.
Yeah.
When in fact it didn't actually get paid for at that price. And Cool Arrow is saying, thanks again for the comment. Love your comments. And we're going to answer more of your stuff later on the show. Everyone who's commenting and asking questions, we're going to get to it later on in the show. But Cool Arrow is saying that happened with the Jimmy Butler PSA 10 Kaboom. He sold, they never paid for it. It came with the sale. I remember, I don't know that this is like a fact, but I do remember Jeff Wilson on a Sports Card Investor podcast last year saying that this was a problem, and that market movers, he made a comment on the podcast, like, market movers wipes the data of these unpaid for sales at a certain point. Like, they'll show up in market movers, but then they wipe them out after, like,
so to that point, Paul, that's what PWCC came back to me and told me that they do is eventually there's only about 2% of auctions that go unpaid for at PWCC. So they eventually wipe it. So that there's a 30-day vesting period for payments to be made after PWCC premiere. And I'm not sure what the payment cycle is on the weekly, but they will eventually wipe the data. I think what's most concerning, though, is that if Card Ladder has the infrastructure or the desire to want to wipe PWCC data clean, why are they not wiping eBay data clean? Because that's the one. It's not the PWCC. I believe that most people are paying for auctions there. eBay is super suspicious. Like, we all have sold on eBay. It's like probably 50% of your cards go unpaid for on eBay at this point in time, right? So if all of that, if the only data feed going to Card Ladder is PWCC and eBay, what's the percentage? I mean, eBay card, there's so many more cards transacted on eBay. So most of the transactions that are feeding Card Ladder's data set are coming from eBay. And we know a large percentages of those transactions don't actually happen. We got some concerning stuff going on here.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'd have to go. I'm going to go back through my eBay sales and determine the amount that have gone unpaid for. For me personally, it definitely hasn't been anywhere near close to 50%. It's been more. Now, mine are much more lower end cards.
Yeah.
So that could be why. And
I've actually never had that happen to me.
Yeah, I've sold probably 500 cards on eBay over the last 12 to 18 months, and I think maybe only 10 or 11 times have they gone unpaid for. But
at the higher end, like if you watch Probstein on eBay, you see cards relisted all the time. It's very interesting how, you know, some of the cards in that, we'll call it like $5,000 to $20,000 range, how many of them actually transact. And that's a card that's probably your highest chill probability is in that type of dollar figure as well, right? Like that's someone with some serious loot on the line. They don't want to lose. Maybe they shill it along at an auction. And certainly I don't want to throw shade or make accusations. I'm just saying statistically, cards in that $5,000 to $20,000 range seem like they're reposted on eBay quite a bit.
Yeah, no, that is definitely good information, and it definitely is a problem. And anything else, Paul, that you want to share from because I know you've been digging on this.
Yeah, I'm digging hard. I'm super competitive, and taking a loss is something like that. I'm just I'm partly like, you know, is this game rigged? That's what I'm trying to figure out. You know, is there certain things that I need to learn that I've done that are just not right? Because, you know, taking 5-figure losses on a card it's hard to stomach, right? I think one thing that I've learned is that ultimately you want to have control to sell a card into the largest market possible, right? So one thing that I learned with PWCC Premier in particular was, you know, at the top end, you're going to have very affluent buyers that are after those major chase cards, you know, the Curry RPA and, you know, some of those cards that continually set benchmarks for record-breaking pricing. But at the low end of an auction like that, you know, the cards are $15,000 to $20,000. There's just not a tremendous amount of buyers that are subscribed to using that. Like, you just don't get a lot of eyeballs on your product. So, and on top of that, you have to be qualified to be able to bid in a premier like auction. You know, you're not selling your card into the largest market possible, and you want to have, whether it's, you know, someone, a big whale that's got tons of cash that wants to buy your card, or someone that's scraped together pennies to be able to buy their first ever high-end card, you want to have access to all buyers to ensure that your card gets the highest price. And I think there's a ton of concern in and around the auction houses, whether it's PWCC or Golden. And I'm telling you right now, the prices there are falling. There is a bloodbath going on, falling knives in that $5,000 to $20,000 range for cards right now, because those auction houses just don't have enough buyers to support the liquidity that's coming on the market right now. So as a seller, I think that's super concerning. And you might be, you know, like if you need liquidity, you could take a massive loss. You might not take a 20% loss. You might take a 50% loss. I mean, I've bought some stuff over the last couple months. I know buyers because I can see sales history where they've bought it 6 months ago. They're off 70% on GOAT cards. That's a problem. You don't want to put yourself in a position whereby you are taking massive losses because there's not enough liquidity in the market where you're selling into. Yeah.
And I wonder, I mean, this might be a little bit off base, but I do wonder, I've thought about this. If I'm going to sell a 5-figure card, I know the like higher 5-figure cards, 6-figure cards, basically everyone's going to go to an auction house. But I think that when you go with the auction house, when it sells, you're stuck. Like, that's it. It's gone. But if you sell it on eBay, I'm not saying this is the right thing to do, but if you take a 5-figure bath on an auction on eBay, you actually don't have to ship that card. You know, I mean, it's not going to be great for your, Kendall, you can speak to this. It's not going to be great for your, you know, you might get into a conflict with someone. and they might give you a bad rating. And I don't know what else would happen beyond that, but you don't have to ship that card. But when you go with an auction house, my guess is that they've got your card already and you're done. Like, that's it. So
yeah, there's a lot of hidden costs. I would advise the community here to seriously look at these auction houses, because even as a buyer, there are, you've got a 20% buyer premium. There's all kinds of hidden costs. What you see on the auction that you're bidding on is not the final price. That's a really, really, really important thing to watch, is that what you think the price is, that's not it. There's hidden costs with vaults and things like that as well. Obviously, when you sell the card, then there's a consignment fee. You better be very, very, very certain that you're able to make a return, because you're eroding a serious percentage of your return in transaction costs as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. You're absolutely right on that. And you got to
auction houses, Paul, they always win. It's like when you go to Vegas, the house always wins. I will say this: PWCC and Golden always win. They actually don't care about consigners making returns. They want transaction volume. It's all about revenue, because they clip a percentage of revenue. And that was my point, was, if there's concerns on a long-term basis that there's not enough buyers to support premier level auctions, if all of the people that are consigning cards to auction houses are taking 50, 60, 70% losses, what actually ends up happening is that everyone leaves that auction house. So it's in the best long-term interest for the auction houses to have fewer auctions, to shorten the amount, you have higher standards for what maybe needs to go into a premier level auction. It won't last forever if people are taking significant losses.
Yeah. So Alex Mancinas, Alex, thank you for this question. What happens when a customer does not pay for the card? Do they get a negative buyer rating? Do they get the account suspended? And Cool Arrow has commented that from their understanding, nothing happens. If someone does it a certain amount of times, 6-month period, they have an opportunity to stop those types of accounts from bidding in their auctions. Kendall, this was kind of my understanding as well, but are they correct on this on eBay?
Yeah, I mean, this is like literally the worst part of the hobby. Like, it happens all the time. Luckily, I haven't had very much experience with that, but and let me just also caveat this: there's a lot of fear on the Facebook pages and all that kind of stuff. You just see it roaming. You're just like, people are like, oh, like, I don't want to do this because of, I don't want to trust somebody. It's like, tough nuts, like, grow up and trust somebody, I think my personal philosophy is trust people until they don't deserve it. And now that's just my own ethical framework, like, obviously it's a whole different thing, but in this regard, I know that eBay, that's something I'm just going to pause it there. I'm not going to want to get any more into that. In regards to the email or the eBay stuff, selling stuff is always a risk, whether it's sports cards or a house, like it's not always going to be a perfect transaction, and so when you put your stuff out there, there's this relationship that you're kind of trusting the market with it. And I think, in regards to what eBay is trying to do, I have heard murmurs to where they are trying to do different things to try to make it a more reliable sale, because I know eBay also is realizing that the sports card market is 95% of what they're doing. Like, eBay, obviously you can sell and buy a bunch of stuff on eBay, but it's not what it was in the early 2000s, where people were selling, Coca-Cola wallpaper for $6 a roll. And then, like, it's just like, that's not it anymore. It's really just look at what they're doing with the vault. They know where they're going. There's actually a little beta thing that you can look at, and it'll show your buys and sells, and it'll track your profit margins. So that's actually already in the platform. So I think eBay is trying to go that direction as an e-commerce platform, that they want to be the premier. And I think this is obviously something they're going to have to figure out, because it's probably the biggest thing that the biggest hit on eBay is that there's so much false buyers and there's so many like false purchases. And then also you can look at price manipulation. Like, if Paul, for instance, if I list a Gretzky PSA 5, and I say, hey, Paul, I want you to go buy this card from me for $2,000 or whatever, and I'm going to send you the $2,000 to make it a premier purchase. And then you just, I'm basically just putting a small percentage tax on, like, you're only like, if I'm giving you that money to buy it from me, then I'm just paying the seller fee basically to get an official comp out there so that I can go to a show and sell it for that. You know, and so
Kendall, like, that's the concerning thing about Card Ladder, right? Like, I know there's legit comps on Card Ladder on a card that I've lost 5 figures on in the last 30 days that it did not sell, and I use that data. Like, I have to take ownership. Like, I use that data. I lost that money, but I fell into using a platform like Card Ladder that was supposed to be legit comps. It wasn't.
Now, I don't know from eBay's perspective how you get around something like that. I mean, fraudulent purchases are part of any marketplace, really. But I would be interested to know how eBay would like, if I could see eBay in front of me, whoever it was that I'm talking to, and I said, hey, how can I defend against this? I give Paul some money, and he's like, well, that's a criminal investigation. I can't really, what do you do with that? But
things really hard. The non-paid is easy, because if PWCC is telling us that they're telling Card Ladder the items that go unpaid for, if Card Ladder could set up the infrastructure to be able to get that data feed from PWCC, eBay could give Card Ladder a data feed as well.
That's what I do like that about 130 point is 130 point shows you the money that was transacted. And so there are some marketplaces out there that are just pulling sales data rather than buy data rather than sales data. And so I know that eBay is moving towards, I've seen in the news that they're moving towards, like, specifically for buy it now auctions, you have to put the money up front when you make the bid, like when you make the potential offer or anything like that. Like, there won't, from what I've understand, and I don't know when this is going to, or if it already is, I don't know if they have like a plan to roll this out, but I've seen it to where they are going to make it where you have to put the money kind of like in this escrow fund before you make the final bid. So when I accept the offer, it immediately comes through rather than accepting the offer and then just saying, like, hope they pay.
I love that. Okay, so I'm glad that you brought that up, because first of all, I had no idea that was going to happen. So thanks for
now. I don't know if that is for sure happening, but I know that they've talked about it.
I love that. So if that does happen, then I think that obviously helps big time with the issue that we're talking about, at least on eBay. And it leads me to believe, like, typically when you start to see like things change on platforms like that, it usually leads to more change if that change works, quote unquote, for the platform and its users, right? If the users like it, they're going to make more changes along those lines. So thinking this through, if that does happen, Kendall, and then the sellers like it and the buyers like it, all the users like it enough, then why wouldn't they implement something like when you list a card for auction on eBay, you can set the starting bid, but you can also set like a minimum reserve price that item actually needs to sell. And why wouldn't eBay use its own sold purchased data for that same card within the last X amount of time to set that price, so that it almost would effectively mean that the market, like, that something couldn't necessarily happen like what happened to Paul. Like, Paul's in a different stratosphere than when you and I are in terms of like the cards that we're selling. But even if you and I go try to sell a $500 card, there's always a risk that we might only get $350 for that card. But if eBay implemented something like the bidder has to commit to a charge on their card right now to say X% of the reserve price or something like that, that could help, like, us taking huge losses on these cards that we know are worth more.
Yeah, it's like a stop loss with a stock. I mean, I think eBay, I'm a huge fan of eBay. If I'm betting on anyone to figure this out on a go forward, I'm all in on eBay. I've lost trust in the auction houses I will never, ever, ever consign again, just based off of my whole experience. I want to have control. I mean, I think with eBay, they're already starting to work on some of that infrastructure by spitting out algorithms that give you a suggested price. So making you more knowledgeable about sales history within their own framework. But if anyone's going to figure this out, I believe it's going to be eBay. I think that most sellers are probably best served keeping to eBay. It's the largest reach. It's the most international reach in terms of selling your product into the largest market. You're probably most protected as a seller under eBay from a worldwide perspective. Yeah, I think that this is something it's going to be super interesting to see. Like at the high end, yeah, for sure, the Goldens of the world should probably exist, right? But it's the middle tier. Like what I don't see is, I just don't see. PWCC used to be like the largest consigner or reseller of cards on eBay. Then they got the boot from eBay or what, I don't know what exactly happened. Then they build their own platform and they're trying to create this breakaway platform and take buyers over there that used to be on eBay. Like that's not good for the industry. You got to centralize where the buyers are. Like they all need to be in one marketplace so that you get the highest price for cards. What's happening right now is the worst possible thing for sellers. It's great for buyers. If we weren't in a declining market right now, this would be a great thing for buyers because there's not enough buyers in any platform to support good pricing. I've heard alts the exact same way, that the pricing's terrible. As a seller, people are getting killed right now. And if you're a buyer that knows how to scoop up sharp deals over there, you can make tons of money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
I just wanted to notice a caveat. There is a feature on eBay of a minimum sale auction. The unfortunate part is it's like it doesn't really make sense to not just say this is the first minimum bid,
right?
Because it's transparent by saying this. Like for instance, I bid on something one time, and it was like probably should have been like $100 card, and I ended up getting I won the auction at like $35, and then I got a notification that said you did actually not win this auction. It was held until it was at $75.
Yep.
And I'm like, then why would you even waste time with that?
Yeah.
Then just say that. It actually really pissed me off because I think what it is like this false hype. Like you're getting all these other like 0 through $75 bids. They're basically meaningless, but it just shows that you've got people raising their hand willing to be involved, so that at the $75 level, you've got 6 people getting notifications instead of 1. And I'm like, totally. That's crummy business right there.
It's people are getting eyeballs. There was a guy that was selling, it was a Toronto-based seller that was selling an 86 Jordan rookie card, PSA 10, and was selling it on eBay. And I thought, that's interesting. Why would you sell that on eBay? Especially because a lot of American buyers are a little hesitant to buy from Canada as well, just not knowing how the border's how it's gonna shake out. So I sent him a message.
Customs and stuff.
Yeah, I asked him, he's based in Toronto. I said, why are you doing this? And he said, it's the largest amount of eyeballs I can possibly get. This is a worldwide platform that is appealing to people everywhere. And got me thinking, I
actually buy a lot of cards from Canada.
Yeah. Sometimes there's deals because people are afraid.
That's exactly why, is because my dollar goes further in Canada.
I think that eBay is going to figure it out. I actually really do. Whether it becomes a deposit system. I mean, when you buy a house, you got to put a deposit down on the house. If the house drops in value, you have the option to walk away from your deposit. That's the whole.
I would love for eBay to potentially partner with some sort of credit system, some sort of bank, to say and have sort of like an eBay credit system built in, saying, hey, we will, you can't make bids over a certain amount because you're not a trusted buyer yet. Yep. And then say hey, say Paul, buys a card from me for $500, eBay immediately credits me the $500, and they figure out the payment between them and Paul. And there's a credit system attached to it.
That's so easy to actually do. The buy now, pay later companies like Klarna, for example, right? Or PayBright or Sezzle or any of those, they all have ability to check credit. There would absolutely be a fairly easy partnership out there for eBay to partner with someone that can process credit quickly, because any retailer that's using a buy now, pay later has to have the ability to process credit quickly. That's actually something that could be done that would be wonderfully successful, I think.
The problem is you're going to have to dox yourself, and people are not doxing themselves because there's a whole issue in the credit or in the card market that people are not paying taxes on their sales and buys.
Yeah.
And so that with the credit system, you get, that's a reporting system. Yep. Therefore, you're going to have to owe money to Uncle Sam or whoever, whatever the Canada Uncle Sam is.
Yeah, fair enough. And I mean, I think all of that stuff's going to happen anyways. People are
that's true.
I mean, everyone's probably just compiling losses at this point, so maybe there won't be any profits that you have for the next couple of years.
You can report capital losses.
Exactly. Bank those losses this year, right? But yeah,
there's a positive for you with PWCC. You can capital loss.
Yeah, exactly. All changes that are going to happen, though. This is all, and if you look in the crystal ball of this hobby, these are good questions that I think we're all asking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is a phenomenal discussion, and we've got some guys in the chat that are.
I know these questions have been good, but like we're on a roll.
Yeah, I know. I haven't wanted to interrupt you guys either, and I think that like the point is, and I agree with Paul. Like eBay has the ability to implement these things way easier than anyone else. And from everything Kendall said, from everything Paul said with a credit system, and then we've got Alex Mancinas in the chat making good points. We've got Cool Arrow in the chat making good points. And I think Alex's point is like, this could benefit the sellers, but handicap the buyers, but not necessarily, because if eBay comes out and says, look, because everyone's a buyer and a seller, that's kind of the point. Like if
that's the trick to our hobby.
That's right.
We're just making money so we can buy other cards.
So yeah, and some of us are taking money out of cards every once in a while, and that's great. But like for the most part, we're all buyers and sellers. So like whenever I've overpaid for a card on eBay, I've always paid for every single auction, every single buy it now that I've ever won, because not only because it's the right thing to do. That's the reason why I do it. But really, reason 1B is because I'm also a seller. I don't want eBay to come back to me, even though there's no like policy for this or, no examples of this necessarily happening. I think that it could start happening, and maybe it should start happening, where it's like, hey, if these cards go unpaid for from your account, now you're not able to sell over a certain amount, or, and eBay has the ability to just take it away. They took it away from PWCC. They could take it away from any of us. So we should all pay for our cards. I hope that day is coming, because I think that kind of government of it would make a lot of sense for the hobby. So,
yeah, I hate the idea you brought up earlier where you were like, yeah, I could just not sell it.
I know.
Go!
I hate that too. But yeah, it could, but I think that a mix of all of these things would be the best, right? Maybe we should write our own little manifesto, sports card strategy group manifesto to eBay.
99 thesis. We'll nail it to their door.
Yeah.
Do you guys think, I mean, there's some good stuff going on here. Do you guys think that there's people at PWCC and Golden sitting around talking about this stuff right now?
No,
I actually don't.
No, I don't.
That was a point that I made. When I was having conversations about, some of my reservations about the data and stuff like this. And, I don't actually believe that there are conversations about how do you protect sellers to get the highest price possible? How do you create transparent marketplaces? All of those things. I don't believe some of that stuff is going on.
And I've got friends that have previously worked in some of these industries, and there's some nasty stories going on. And I won't name any names or companies, but they're companies of. And there's some sideways action going on, whether that's in the selling market or in the production market, whether that is like on the line or whether that is, in the secondary. There's some sideways things going on. So,
yeah, but we all
just
have
like any other industry,
Yeah, and that's just exactly it. And for the most part, I think everyone is trying to do their best to grow the hobby. I mean, companies need to be profitable. They need to, but all of those things, it's all interconnected, right? Like if buyers and sellers go away, there are no profits for companies. Like it all requires, when you think about your business being 6, 12, 18, 24 months down the road, having that forward outlook to say, this is where things are going, right? And I think as consumers or people that are, using these services, it's okay to ask. It's okay to ask about, I saw this comp and then, it wasn't paid for, and ask questions, it's fair. If you pay for a service, it's okay to ask a question and hope to get a transparent answer. And if that answer isn't good, if it's not good enough, or if there is no answer, that's a problem. And it's okay to wave your hand and say, I'm not okay with that answer as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And and we've had some questions in the chat during this discussion, some of them about the vault services, some of them about other services related to eBay and PWCC. And I think bringing us back full circle to where Paul Fisher kind of brought in this awesome information is that he inquired about, what was going on. And I love when you learn, unfortunately, I don't want anyone to have to learn 5-figure lessons, but there is some silver lining in it where, you have gone deep on a lot of this stuff and provided a lot of value for the community. So we appreciate you coming on and talking about all of this. And I was wondering how I was going to segue into the impact of the 2022 NBA draft on basketball card investing after this phenomenal discussion that we just had. But Cool Arrow, who's been on fire in the chat today, brought up a basketball question, which we'll get to in a second. But I'm excited to talk basketball with you guys for a second. And
I love that question he just asked, by the way.
All right. Well, so
no, yeah, go for it. Yeah, go. Yeah, I don't want you to get off your where you go.
Before we get to that question, Paul brought up SGA early on in the show. He's got a pile of SGA cards. So I just quickly wanted to discuss some of the guys that I think we should be excited about a little bit more based on the NBA draft. Now, it's super early. There's a lot that's going to happen, obviously, between now and October when the NBA season gets underway. But we all know that the sports card market is driven sometimes just as much on hype as it is on anything else, player performance related or team performance related. So I think that there's a little bit of both, a little bit of hype and a little bit of encouraging signs for some guys based on some draft moves that some teams made. So some of the basketball card rankings that we have updated at nooffseason.com this week based on the NBA draft, which was last Thursday. A few things I'll throw out there, guys, real quick, and then I'll get your comments on this, and we'll get to Cool Arrow's question as well, and any other thoughts that you guys have. But I believe that, the Thunder, having skipped over the Pistons and the Kings into the second spot, we knew that was going to be good for guys like SGA and Josh Giddey, I think, because solely based on, not that anyone would take over the scoring responsibilities from SGA, but that just the team would get better, right? The team would get a top 3 piece to make them better. Hopefully they would stop tanking, and then they would become more relevant as it relates to, their players would become more relevant as it relates to their value in the market. So I think that Chet Holmgren going to the Thunder was, in my opinion, the best fit and pick in the entire draft, because I believe that he's going to help that team win possibly more than any other player that went anywhere. And I think that Josh Giddey is going to benefit the most. So we've moved Josh Giddey up in our basketball card rankings quite a bit to number 27. We also moved SGA up quite a bit to number 30. I just think the Thunder is going to be a much better team with Holmgren in there. It's probably not that far-fetched, right? Because they weren't really that great last year. But a couple other moves that were a little bit less profile that I think have some impact. I like Cade Cunningham even more now because I like what the Pistons did in the draft. And then I do actually, not that Luka is a sleeper, right? But I do like Luka more now with the Christian Wood acquisition. I'm more comfortable investing in Luka now, so he's more solidified in our rankings, and I think he's less of a risk reward guy, and he's more of just now he's just really on that trajectory to make it to the NBA Finals and win, because I think that Christian Wood for the 20 something, whatever pick that they got him for was a phenomenal move. So those are my big ones. What do you guys think of those before we get to the Tyrese Maxey question? Oh, one more. I think Damian Lillard and Kevin Durant, those are guys I haven't really been high on Damian Lillard at all. I did move him up to number 28 though today because I believe that over the next couple months there could be some sneaky Damian Lillard plays with the hype around. I don't know that Kevin Durant's going to get traded there, but just the resurgence of what they could do in Portland and Damian Lillard coming back. He is only 31, and we just saw Steph at age 32 dominate. So I did move Damian Lillard up quite a bit to number 28. What do you guys think? Kendall, I'll let you go first. What do you guys think of those comments there? And anything else you want to add that you saw in the draft that you want to talk about?
Yeah. So I love Dame, by the way. I love the Dame play. I think he's one of the most underrated guys in the actual sport of basketball because he's a world-class player that's been on a franchise that has been world-class at making his efforts nullified. Like they've been the worst at making his teams competitive, and he's just out there balling every single day, and so I love the Dame play. One, because I also have heard recently that the CEO of Nike is trying to buy the Timberwolves. The Trailblazers. And I think that would do a world for his market. I think the Blazers are in a good position to I don't want Kevin Durant to go there. I'll be fair, but I do think they are in I'm also a Thunder fan, so we'll get to that in a second. Thunder up. We got
giddy up.
We got this giddy up, baby. So anyway, we'll just leave that there. I think Paul and I are going to have some fun at realizing which of our teams is going to be competitive first. And that'll be a fun
versus OKC.
Detroit versus OKC. But no, I like the Dame play. I think I liked the Dame play before the Durant news and before the Nike news. And I think that also just plays into this. I think the Trailblazers are going to have to do something in the next year to really turn this franchise around. And all I'm saying is if the Trailblazers turn around, Dame's prices go up. If he gets traded and wins a championship somewhere, then his prices are going to go up. And so I think he's almost at his somewhat of a floor, or at least some sort of a plateau for Dame. And we've seen him coming off an injury. His core injury is probably going to be healed, I would imagine, if he took the time to do that in the offseason. I think it's a good play.
Damian Lillard's almost like a perfect example of what we were talking about earlier on in the show, where it's like, can we do a little bit less prospecting in this market and a little bit more sure plays? Dame feels to me like a guy who, like, whereas in a different market, I might have put more money into like Anthony Edwards, who I love, or LaMelo Ball or whatever, but or SGA or Maxey or Jordan Poole, all these guys, right?
Or but Simmons, who's also on the Trailblazers.
Yeah, Anthony Simons. But now I'm thinking like, okay, why not Dame? Like Dame feels safer because it's like he already has a bit of a legacy going. He already has a market of fans that will buy his cards for sure, and he's not going to tank. Like I think he is at a floor. So I think we're on the same page with that. And so I wouldn't have even bought Dame not too long ago, but now my mind has changed for all those reasons. So
there's like a lot of players in that, like Kawhi is not a lot different. I mean, that's, Clippers should be good this year. I'd think Kawhi coming back with a year of rest with Paul George on his side, like he could so easily win a title this year. They could add a free agent. You could throw him in that same category. I mean, Jimmy Butler's kind of like the same type player, like people love Jimmy. He's not like, he's not LeBron. He's not, he's not Jason Tatum, but really good career. All they really need is a title, like a Dame or a Jimmy Butler. And those are cards that could really go up in value. I like the Dame play a lot. Like, I mean, I'm going back to thinking about, when you buy sports cards, for a sports card to go up in value, there needs to be someone that will pay more for it in the future. So the downside protection is buying something with a collector's base of fans, whereby you have downside protection because there's a collector's base that will buy that card for something in the future. Like that's why Jordan cards are the safest investment in all of sports cards. Mantle as well, because there is a massive collector base that will buy that card if it drops in value. Like, some of the rare 90s inserts of Jordan, if those cards drop in value, there's going to be another collector that says, yeah, I'll take that because I'm going to throw that in my PC and I'll store it away. And I don't even care about whether it goes up or down because I just want the card. I don't see that like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander has that type of collector base. Like to me,
You've never been to Kentucky, my friend.
He's Canadian and he doesn't have any fans up here, it seems. No, and he's a wicked player, but I just to the same extent, like how many Shea cards were out there manufactured? That was like one of the worst years by Panini in terms of like oversaturation of supply.
That's my main Luka fear as well.
For sure. And like Luka, to your point earlier about having like a bit of, maybe not being as worried because Christian Wood's there. I think Jalen Brunson's gone. Like he's going to the Knicks and that's the second best player on that team. Right. So I'm not super, they've got all kinds of cap problems over there in Dallas. Like unless they magically figure out a way to get Kyrie and he plays 60 games a year, I actually don't see how Dallas is better next year than they are this year because Brunson's gone. It's like the worst kept secret in free agency right now that Brunson's going to sign with the Knicks, right? So I don't know. I don't see how that is a positive for Luka. I don't see how they make that team better being capped out with a bunch of kind of mediocre players. Like, like they've got one mega superstar and a lot of good role players. They're not going to win a title with that lineup.
Well, I would say that Christian Wood is better than a role player, but I would say getting him for a 20th pick is really a good value.
No doubt. If the Raptors would have got Christian Wood, I would have said, yep, sweet. Christian Wood can't play defense, right? Like you got to play defense to be able to win titles. He can get stats in terms of rebounding, but is he a good defender? No, he's not a good one-on-one defender, right?
Which is also Luka's problem. Exactly.
Like I actually think if Brunson's gone, they're worse than they were this year.
Yeah, they're going to have to make some more moves.
Like they need DeAndre Ayton or they need to make a play. They, they're going to have to swing for the fences to bring someone in. And I don't even know if Ayton's the play. They need someone that can handle the ball a bit as well.
Cuban does swing though. We've seen he swings.
Right? Ayton, I'll say that could be almost a runaway in the West. But
the most interesting thing, sorry to cut you off, Paul, is it's free agency. It's what's going to happen with
That's this week too.
KD, because there's a report out this morning that the Nets are going to let Kyrie's agent talk to teams now about a sign and trade. Like if that happens, what is the chain of events that happens? Because if Kyrie leaves, KD's gone as well. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Which is the funniest Simmons story I've ever heard in my life. Or I think I got his name wrong actually.
What, Ben
Simmons? Yeah, Ben Simmons. The funniest Ben Simmons end of all that. He goes to the Nets and everyone leaves.
Like they'll be terrible, right? But if Kyrie's gone, they're buddies. Like I can't see Durant sticking around to play with Ben Simmons, and I couldn't even tell you who else is on the roster, right? Like we have made some major mistakes with that team, not keeping Jared Allen, basically playing into the hands of Harden, Kyrie, and what Durant want to do. Well, Harden's gone. They traded so many draft picks to get Harden as well. So they have no draft capital whatsoever. That is a team that's a mess. So the biggest question is like, who can put together the big package for KD then? If Kyrie's gone, where's KD going? Because that could be a huge play as well. Like, ultimately Durant is a top 15 player probably all time. He's in that potential. If he goes to the Knicks, if he goes to Portland to play with Dame, I know you don't want to see that, Kendall, but that would be a big story. That the whole NBA landscape's going to change.
Yeah, we're going to keep updating our rankings. You mentioned Kawhi. He's number 38. I agree that he's definitely like in that Dame conversation of like, okay, let's look at these guys as buys right now, not only because of the market and hedging a little bit against prospects, more with guys with legacy and one title run away from like a pretty big price jump. KD definitely is in that discussion. I think
I think Dame also has some outside of basketball value.
Oh, he's a cool dude. Like he's a Kobe, like, you know, that Mamba mentality. I'm not leaving. I'm staying with this team. He's got the hip hop career going. Like he's someone that you can cheer for. He's a likable player, I think.
I think he'll do a lot of stuff after his basketball career too, which is why I'm interested in hedging my bet on him. So
the other thing I like about that, like, I mean, 2012 is that iconic Prism set, right? Like, just like, you know, you've got the 86 Fleer set, 61. That 2012 Prism set's going to go down. It's going to be a super, super famous. It's not
overprinted. Yeah.
Not overprinted. You got Kawhi and Dame with rookie cards in that set.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get to Cool Arrow's question about Tyrese Maxey. For me, in the sports card investment report at nooffseason.com right now, he's a hold. I like Maxey. I think his the reason why he's a hold is because his pricing has been too high, I believe, to buy into. And now we're coming down. We should see his pricing coming down a little bit over the next couple months, just based on the last couple years' trends. Of course, this year could be different than any other year because of the market and everything like that. It could come down even more, or more people might be holding. But to me, Tyrese Maxey is a little bit risky to buy in on because everybody knows about him. Great player. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who doesn't like Tyrese Maxey as a player. But I think to me, that means if you have him, hold him. Now is not the time to sell. I do think when the NBA season starts, you should be able to get more money for his decent cards than you would if you have him now. So I wouldn't be worried about like dumping him because of the market or anything. I would hold him till October, November, and I think you'll see a spike just because of the excitement of the NBA season. Not a spike, but I think you'll see an increase because of the excitement of the NBA season kicking off. And if you're into kind of, you know, wanting to move out of some things and into some other things in cards, I would say hold Maxey until then. I also think Maxey's a pretty decent long-term hold. I think he's a legit player. What do you guys think about Maxey? Kendall, you want to go first?
I like Maxey. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think he's a guy that's going to be a great role player. And unfortunately, I don't think that does well for his investability. If we're talking about so I love Maxey, especially from a fantasy perspective. I think he's a guy you can buy real cheap in fantasy drafts, and he's going to get a lot more plays than he's going to get more run than you would think. His usability ranking is always higher than I think it's going to be. And so when you look at that kind of a stat and a little bit of a NBA sabermetric, I think Maxey does well there. He's also pretty smart with the ball. Like he's not just he's not a Russell Westbrook type where he's just going to run fast at the basket and throw the ball around, which I think is what people thought he was going to be. He's a lot more smarter than that. And I think his development with the Sixers has been really good. But I think he's going to end up being the kind of guy like what we had. We talked about Williams in the NBA Finals. He was a good sixth guy, and he was huge against Green. He was big against Green, and but his cards. We had that conversation. Is like, should you sell now? I was like, why did you even buy this card? First off, but yes, you should have sold. I think Grant Williams is his first name, so he seems to fit in that category for me right now. I think he's a guy that will maybe be a fringe starter, but I'm not investing in him personally, but I think I'm excited to watch him play, and I'm excited to watch him grow. And if he proves me wrong, fantastic. I live in Kentucky, so I'm going to hear about it all the time. You played for UK. So anyway, who didn't play for UK, by the way?
I would say this. If you bought in and you're up, I'd be unloading. That's just my personal take.
Yes.
There's better stuff out there. If you've made nice returns because you got in on the Tyrese Maxey market at the beginning, you prospected him, I'd cash, because I got this card right here. You guys remember this guy, Kobe White?
Kobe White.
How many people lost money on a player?
Absolutely.
Now, Tyrese Maxey's a better ball player than Kobe White, sorry. But to me, there are some big time similarities in that genre of product or of player, right? Like it's a guard obviously can put buckets. Could Maxi regress a little bit? It's totally possible, right? Like, I mean, this card, I bet I'm down 95% on this card from what I bought it at.
I can't believe you're comparing Tyrese Maxey to Kobe White. Tyrese Maxey is a completely different player.
He had a lot of hype though, right? Like going next season, he had a good second season. Going into the next season, there was a lot of hype, right? And that card, like it was in and around. It was Shea, Hero, and Kobe White. Those three guys, there was some serious money going into those cards, right? Jamal Murray a little bit. I don't know if you could cash out on Tyrese Maxey and buy Dame or buy Kawhi or buy Jamal Murray. I'm taking the profits and running. I'm not waiting for the season to come around again and for everyone else to let the market drop, the entire sports card market drop 20%, and then all of a sudden have more attractive goats to buy. And on top of that, be prospecting and, better names out there at cheaper prices than Tyrese Maxey. I'm not tying money up in him.
Yeah. I have a higher opinion of Tyrese Maxey than you guys do. I think that's the difference. But I agree. I do agree with what you're saying. I mean, if you're up, and I will never fault anybody for selling when they're up, whoever it is, like, or even to break even. Like if it's it's your own personal situation. So I think you're right. That's a qualifier. It does depend on that. I think in general, though, if I'm writing about Tyrese Maxey as a buy, sell, or hold, meaning you have him, what's kind of the best trajectory? I do believe the best trajectory for Maxey is actually to wait till the NBA season, because I think he's actually a legit all-star, like sooner rather than later. Like he's not in the same category as some of the other guys that you mentioned, although I do agree that it is risky. So I could be wrong, but I just have a higher opinion of Maxey. I think I'm trying to find the next Maxey, and my guy in Brooklyn, Cam Thomas, I believe, is going to be the guy that will perform like the next Tyrese Maxey. The only curveball would be is if Kevin Durant does leave, then that would maybe make that prediction go down the crapper, because it's all predicated around like Brooklyn making the playoffs, Cam Thomas being in the spotlight a little bit, and if Brooklyn sucks, I mean, the reason why Maxey is different than some of the other guys we've talked about is because he is like a legit 20 point per game scorer on a 3, 4, 5 seed in the playoffs that's like actually competitive and could continue to make NBA finals runs. So right.
Like, do you think the Sixers are likable though? Like Embiid almost won the MVP last year, and like his cards haven't really been able to achieve pricing. Is that because people just don't like the Sixers? Like I hate the Sixers. I mean, most Toronto people do. We've had a bit of a rivalry with them. I just don't like I don't think they're that likable of a team. I don't think that they have a national fan base either. Like, does that not hurt a Tyrese Maxey that there's not a national fan base that actually, want to see that player succeed?
I mean, I think that every team is one run away from that. So I think the argument could be made that you could make that argument about every team in the NBA. Maybe with of a few, but like the ESPNs of the world and the TNTs of the world are like, they're going to create the storyline that is happening. So I think that like the answer to your question probably like now is that Philadelphia probably isn't as likable as maybe some other teams like, I don't know, Milwaukee or I was going to say Memphis is probably more likable, for example. But I do think that
something weird was happening.
Philly has sorry, Kendall. I do think that like Philly has the history of winning championships with Dr. J. Barkley played there. They're one title run away from like all of a sudden Philly being like the it city. And if Maxey's one of the it guys in the it city, along with Embiid and maybe Harden, it's a big if, right? Like I'm not
Eagles. I don't think anyone liked the Eagles after they won the Super Bowl. So I don't know if I can get behind that. I don't like Philly. I don't like any of their teams. and I just can't support Philly. So
as a fan, but as a sports card investor, you don't think that if the Sixers made it to the NBA Finals, that there would be more of a market for particular Sixers cards?
Yeah, because like when Denver made a run, they didn't make it to the finals a few years back, but they had a good team. Did anything really happen to Jokic cards? No, he's won two MVPs. You know, even Chris Middleton, he's a really good player. Nothing's happened to the Chris Middleton.
Maggies.
I don't know. Like, I think it all comes down to like superstars. Like Embiid's the superstar on that Philly team. If anyone's going to like pop in value because the 76ers are good, it should be Embiid, right? Like Maxi's always going to be that third wheel. It's tough to have your card go up if you're a third wheel.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I don't agree that Maxi is a third wheel, but I think that I think that that's true. Like you have to pick one guy in a market that you're going to invest in, and you know that's hard to do. So
like, I'd go with a guy I know you're big on, Garland in Cleveland. I know you're a big Darius Garland fan, right? Like to me, I don't see a whole lot of difference in their game right now. But if I was banking on a more likable team as a national fan base and like someone that's going to actually be an all-star, I'd probably go like 9 out of 10 times I'd bet on Darius Garland over Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah, Darius Garland's number 8 on our basketball card rankings at nooffseason.com, and Maxey is number 14. Funny enough, we have Trey Young at 11, Devin Booker at 12. So we've got our own, rationale for why we do those rankings. But yeah, thanks to everybody on the basketball discussion. We've had some great comments from our live audience. So Cool Arrow talking about Jokic. Ziggy No, what up, Ziggy No? Thanks for jumping in. We appreciate you watching. He's talking about loving Paul Fisher's honest comments on Kobe White. He's saying there's more Kobe Whites than there are Ja or Lucas or winners. And I think Kendall and Paul definitely agree with that. I agree with that. I think it's we're stuck on the Tyrese Maxey, but in general, I think we're all in agreement with that. I do want to give a quick shout out to my guy Carter from LSU Power Hour with Carter the Power. I was on their show with Andy Kaysen, our guy from Football Card Quest, and I was on the Card Quest show last week, and those guys did an amazing job. We actually talked a lot of basketball in addition to football, so thanks Carter for chiming in. And now we are going to move into another basketball topic related to Steph Curry. Is Steph Curry a buy, sell, or hold? And this question came up in our Facebook group, Sports Card Strategy Facebook group. And I know Paul and Kendall, you guys both kind of chimed in on this. And of course it depends on the card, right? But Kendall, let's let you go first, and then Paul's going to bring us home strong with the Steph Curry because he's got a lot of experience recently with Steph Curry cards. But given all the factors we've talked about on today's show, what would you do with Steph? Is he somebody that you're buying? Is he somebody that you're selling? Or is he somebody that you're holding, or maybe more than one?
I don't remember what I said on the Facebook page, to be fair, but I will say that do I think Steph gets invited to the GOAT table? I would probably say yes to that. But I would also say that he's probably my least favorite at the table to invest in. And to be honest, I am not 100% sure why, he's my least favorite at the table. And at that table, I'm considering like Magic, Bird, Jordan, Kobe, LeBron, maybe Hakeem, like those kind of guys. I think Steph is invited into that conversation, and I think he's earned it. And I think this was the run that we were waiting on for Steph. We were waiting on him to take a team that was pretty much Steph and the boys to the finals rather than Steph and Durant, Steph and a healthy Draymond and Clay, Steph and, like a system that works well. His previous championships, you could always play on something else. This one is not. And you saw that emotion come out in Game 7 when he was like, I've worked so hard for this, because I think he wanted to prove to everybody that he's the dude out there, and he beat a really good Celtics team. But if you're forcing me to a wall saying buy, sell, or buy, hold, or trade, sell, you know what I'm trying to say. I'm probably selling.
Yeah. And in fairness, this was Jason Miyasaki's question, and he was specifically asking about a 2012 Timeless Talents Signatures Curry auto out of 99. So a non-rookie auto, basically, I think is what, the best way to frame up this question. So I didn't give you all the context, and Kendall, you actually didn't reply to this one. Paul did. We'll see if Paul can remember his reply. But
that was a good question. I mean, that's a tricky one, right? The non-rookie autos, they're desirable cards like any autos, people want to put those in their collections. I mean, I'm a huge proponent. If you're up, take the cash, crystallize the returns. The biggest mistakes I've made in cards have been not crystallizing returns. And there's nothing that's like more like annoying when it comes back to what you paid for it. Even worse if you start losing money. But if you were up huge on a card and then it comes back, like it's just so frustrating. So I would say, like, if you're up on Curry, crystallize your returns. I think that this was an incredible championship. This was one of my favorite NBA finals to watch. It reminded me a little bit of when Dirk beat the Heat, because he just I was cheering so hard for Dirk, and I wasn't a huge Mavericks fan at that time. I like Cuban because of Shark Tank, and he's just an interesting character. But like, I love that Dallas team, and the fact that Dirk beat the Heatles, like that he beat that Miami
Heatles.
I despise that team so much, and the fact that Dirk won was awesome. And like, I'm personally, I like the Celtics are my least favorite professional sports team. So the fact that Curry was able to win that title, I was cheering so hard. I think so many people were cheering for Steph to win this title. That's awesome. It got him his seat at the table. I think, to your point, Kendall, he's at the table, no doubt. He's probably like the most questionable at the table. Is that baked into his card pricing? Yeah, probably. Is there much in the short term out there? No, probably not. In 20 years, will the cards be worth more? Probably, so it comes down to what your strategy is as an investor or a collector. Are you in this game for 20 years or are you in it for short term? If you're in this for 20 years, I truly believe, based on the low population of Steph Curry rookie cards, they're going to be worth more in the future. There's just something about Steph. I think he's going to remain relevant, and he'll mean something to all of us 20 years from now. If you're looking for quick returns, probably not. And if you're up, I strongly suggest crystallizing, because you probably buy back in cheaper. That's always
that's what I was going to say.
Buy back in cheaper,
he's so injury risk, he's probably going to have he's going to play probably too long. That Steph is the kind of guy who's going to play way past the time he should say goodbye, and
he's got the game too. Also, like, he can, he's got the game.
He could be a Ray Allen forever.
Yeah, yep. He could be sixth man of the year when he's 39, just coming off the bench shooting threes.
But also, like, his ankles are like dust at this point. So he's going to have a season where he's going to have one of those kind of things happen again, and his prices are going to drop big time, but he's still a goat at the table. So buy him back when he's at his lowest, sell him when he's high. I know, like, this isn't how this works, but if you've got a 10 grand card right now, sell it to the 10 grand, put it on the Steph Curry shelf, and then next year when he rolls his ankle and it's worth 6, buy back in,
Yeah, I always look for, like, what's a catalyst for a card to go up, like, in terms of, like, career, like, monumental career achievement. When Steph broke the 3-point record at Madison Square, that was the moment. Like, I look at, mistakes I've made, again, talking about a card you've been way up on. I was way up on some Steph stuff, right? I should have sold at that moment, because what was the career defining moment that would come next? That 3-point record, that baked him in. And winning the title this year was the cherry on top. I just don't see he's got. He's the 3-point king. What's he going to do? All he's going to do is separate himself that much further. There's no more records to break, right? Like, if you're talking about looking for catalysts, like, LeBron is probably, like, LeBron, if he breaks, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's scoring record, now, if he plays with his kid, like, let's say LeBron at the end of If LeBron plays at the end of his career and all of a sudden, maybe Memphis decides we're going to draft Bronny with the 30th pick overall, could you imagine like John Morant, Bronny, and LeBron on a team? Like that would be nuts. I think that would be a catalyst for stratospheric growth in a LeBron market, which is way, way down right now. That's the type of stuff that I'd be looking for, right?
Like now we're talking, Paul Fisher. Let's go. Yeah. Paul Hickey, I love the LeBron market.
So yeah, and I said this exact thing on Andy's show last week with Carter. I said there's actually a really good chance. Well, there's a decent chance that LeBron can break Kareem's record with Bronny assisting on that play. Like that could actually happen.
Oh, that would be sick.
Not that far-fetched.
Yeah,
that's cool. I didn't think about that.
That's crazy. And like, you got to figure LeBron. So like, I watched this documentary on Amazon about LeBron's high school basketball team that they filmed. And it was all footage from St. Vincent. And I'm thinking, this is so cool. Like, I remember when, the St. Vincent game was on ESPN, and that was like this huge, they played Oak Hill on ESPN.
He played Melo.
They played Melo on ESPN. There's 20,000 people at this high school basketball game, and it's like the biggest talk. And it got me thinking about like nostalgic feelings about LeBron. And like, I mean, I don't necessarily love, as a Kobe fan, do I love that LeBron moved to the Lakers and now he's a Laker? I don't know. I don't love that. Was LeBron going back to Cleveland and winning a championship in Cleveland a pretty cool moment? Friggin' right it was. Like, that whole connection to Cleveland is super cool. But that young LeBron James, like, he was just a kid. Like, that's a very likable LeBron James. If LeBron James can go back to being the likable LeBron James that he was when he first came into the league or when he was a high school kid, that's the catalyst that's going to take him to Michael Jordan status. And if there's a title attached to that, or breaking an all-time scoring record, or having his kid assist on the winning basket, that's the type of thing that takes LeBron to Michael Jordan status. And that's how a Topps Chrome PSA 10 goes from 4,500 where it is now to 20 grand again. Probably not that card high, but figuring out the LeBron card to be in, there is, there's upside there.
Yeah, I agree. So I think, like, to Jason's question, I mean, kind of what Paul's saying and what Kendall and I are nodding our heads in agreement to is that sort of Steph's moment, it just happened. Like, his big moment like that, his big two moments like that, breaking the all-time 3-point record, winning his 4th title, they kind of just happened. So it is probably a good time to sell if you're up. In the Facebook group, I did say I would hold because I think Steph autos will appreciate over the next 5 to 7 years. I did hear Paul Fisher say that that it depends on what you're in it for. If you're in it for the long term and you're going to wait years and years and years, Steph's stuff should appreciate again. But Kendall and Paul are both saying there's the opportunity to sell now and buy back in cheaper. So I think hopefully, Jason, that helps answer your question. And great job, guys. And I think for the rest of the show, we should do audience Q&A because we've got some good audience Q&A coming in from the Facebook group. So rather than spend any time re-ranking the Sports Card Investment Report, I'll just say, everybody check back at nooffseason.com. A lot will happen. A lot will change over the next several weeks. To Paul Fisher's point about NBA free agency, get ready for all of the basketball to get re-ranked. Get ready for hockey to get re-ranked in the offseason, and for football to continue to be tweaked as we go towards football season, and for me to reach out to Kendall to get him to help us re-rank some baseball. So check back in on that. Let's get to audience Q&A from the Sports Card Strategy Facebook group, as well as this live stream's chat has been off the chain. So we're going to answer all your questions that you've put in the chat. And let's see, there's one that just came in from John. John says, is Jason Tatum a good investment right now? And since I've gone first and Paul Fisher's disagreed with me on guys like Tyrese Maxey, I'm going to let Paul Fisher go first. Is Jason Tatum a good investment right now, Paul?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I think the Celtics could be a super sneaky team for Durant, like Jaylen Brown and a couple other players for Durant. I don't know if that team blows up, the Nets blow up. I would put the Celtics maybe at the front of the line for a package for Durant. That changes my whole opinion. I think until we see the shakeout of free agency, I really wouldn't actually make a prediction on any player being a good investment right now, because ultimately, like the window in the NBA can change so fast. Like 2 years ago, we all would have thought that Brooklyn would have had a title by now. They don't, right? So like things can change so rapidly. I would probably, again, I would say if you're up on Tatum, I'd crystallize the return, because I feel like you could probably buy back in. The pricing's still, probably pretty strong on Tatum. He's a nice player. He's got a lot of mileage on the legs pretty early in his career. He plays USA basketball as well. I mean, Celtics, I guess you'd call, would be a national fan base. So that would be something that they do have fans all over the place. So there's always going to be, people that like the Celtics. There's going to be people like me that hate the Celtics. So that's probably a good thing. It keeps them relevant in discussion. I think the Celtics have a very good team. I hate to say it, but I think they're going to be around for a while. They've got very, very good management and some very good role players. To me, if you're even on it, I'd probably hold. If you're up, I'd sell. And depending on how much you're down, I'd probably sell, just looking at, opportunities that are elsewhere.
Yeah, I'll go next, Kendall. So I think Tatum's a sell. I do think he has a new floor, so I think he's not a horrible hold, but I'm not going to repeat anything what Paul said. I'm just, because I agree with everything he said. I'm just going to add on how hard it is to get back to where you were the year before. And so I think that I think that the risk with acquiring Tatum right now or anytime in the next 12 months is going to be like, I agree that Boston's going to be around for a while, but like around can mean second round playoff loss. And that's a good season. But that does nothing for his cards with the expectations that he's going to go back and win a championship. So it's just super hard, especially with Paul's point about how quickly things can change. Like, other teams can become way more competitive than they are right now that Boston would have to face. But yeah, Paul, you bring up a really interesting point. I've been telling the audience for a few weeks now, and I've been writing in the Sports Card Investment Report for the last few weeks, last couple of months actually, to not buy basketball cards until after the NBA draft, because the NBA draft will have a lot of shakeups and movement. But now with free agency starting, it's probably like hold off even longer until after the big names land somewhere in free agency. The Kyries, the KDs, Zach LaVine to a certain extent, not as much. DeAndre Ayton to a certain extent. If DeAndre Ayton were to go to a team like Boston, or if DeAndre Ayton were to go to a team like a team that's already highly competitive and like one piece away, maybe Dallas, something like that, that could be a big move. But it's really more the KDs, the Dames, the Kyries. I think wait till those guys land, and then I think we'll have a full picture. So we're close. We're really close. But that's my take on Tatum. What do you think, Kendall?
Well, I love like bringing up the fact that I picked Tatum in the gauntlet. So
yes,
I'm going to go ahead and say that. But I think I'm not buying Tatum because the way that game 4 through 7 ironed out really disappointed me. And I think when I think perennial guys, like set it and forget it, buy cards perennially, they're always going to go up guys. I think of that guy that has the absolute no quit Mamba mentality, Damien Lillard, that kind of guy that's like coming back, gets broken nose, coming back, always there. The continuous competitor. I don't see that in Tatum. I don't see that. And here's why I say that. In game 6 specifically, there was a run in the third to fourth quarter where Steph was just eating his lunch. And I wouldn't say his lunch specifically. I'm talking about the Celtics in general. And there was a moment where I remember Steph at the top, they'd done some switches, and Al Horford is guarding Curry. And it's like a 10-point game. And I'm watching Tatum, and he's off in the corner ready to help off. That's not a championship mentality. What I wanted to see from Tatum, which really would have put, like, I would have believed in him from then on, which I'd have been like, if Tatum says, you're not beating my team in game 6 unless you're going to go through me, that's an investable trait. And Tatum said, this team's good enough. I think we could beat Curry. Instead of the fact I wanted him to say, I'm good enough. Curry's not going to beat me. And I think that is the difference to where I am not going to invest in Tatum because I don't see that Mamba mentality in him. I don't see that I am the best player ever and you're going to have to prove me otherwise in him. I see him as a great role player, maybe like a super Evan Turner,
all-time role player. Yeah,
like super Evan Turner. That's where I see like. I would say the other way I would say is like Evan Turner is Jason Tatum light, but and so that's saying that he is better than that. I'm not trying to compare them like kind for kind, but I'm saying like he's not Durant, he's not Kobe, he's not LeBron, and I think so I'm out personally. I think he's a star and not a superstar.
That's the problem with these teams that get there once. Like, I don't think Devin Booker's that guy either, you know, and they got to the finals. What was it, 2 years ago? I don't think he's got that killer instinct in him either. I think he would have rolled over the same way that Tatum did. That's the thing. There's only a handful of those type of players in the league. There really are. It's, you know, I believe Giannis would have.
Giannis would have been like, you're not beating me, dog.
Exactly. Giannis would have guarded him. I think Jimmy Butler would have guarded him. Dame absolutely would have. Kawhi would have. Obviously, LeBron would have. I think KD probably would have, although his defense hasn't been great.
I don't know about that.
You know?
I'm a KD hater, obviously.
There's 10 players in the league that would do that, right? Like,
Kawhi would have.
Kawhi would have.
For sure.
That's, you know, it's funny when
Kawhi would have.
Like, closest to Kobe that we see now? Who's the closest? I love thinking about that. You know, like we saw Tatum walk into Game 6 with a Tiger shirt on. Tiger Woods. He texted Kobe's past number, but he wasn't that dude, right?
Yeah.
I thought
it's one thing to admire Kobe and then think that you're better than Kobe.
Yep.
Like, honestly, the guy who's going to be the next Kobe is going to think that Kobe is trash compared to him. And we're gonna laugh at it for a while until we're like, oh damn, he is, you know. And like
Kobe would love that.
Yeah,
he would be so happy about that. That's why I think it's probably a guy like Kawhi. You know, like that's if I was gonna say who's the closest to Kobe in the league, it's Kawhi.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I love your guys' take on all the NBA stuff and John. So going in a little bit of a different direction. John also asked, what sports cards are best to invest in short term? And I do think this is a tougher question to answer, and there are some answers. Paul, what do you think? Is there anything that you would invest in short term right now?
What short term?
Yeah, what is short term? We're talking 6 months?
Yeah, let's go 6 months.
Take a look to see who's dipped the most in the football market. I think Russell Wilson is probably pretty interesting because I think the Broncos are going to be really good. I would not touch Tom Brady with a 10-foot pole. I think there's nothing but huge downside risk with Brady. So I'd be looking at Derek Carr might be interesting. And again, like I don't know a ton about the football market. I think the football market is actually probably one of the riskiest markets just as I don't see international buyers. I'd probably be looking at World Cup. I mean, I still think in the grand scheme of things, like Messi stuff is really cheap. Like on a percentage basis, on an absolute basis, the most amount of money I've made in cards was on Messi Mega Crack 71s. So I'd bought several of them and sold them at the very, very, very peak of the market. I still think that card in hindsight, now that, you know, when I look at it, where it's come down to, like, I mean, his other rookie cards from the Mega Crack sets are hideous, so I would never buy any of them. The 71 is the most attractive card, right? So to me, when I look at like an all-time soccer card investment, because I don't see, you know, Zidane and Pele and their rookie cards to me are just not really recognizable cards. The 71 Mega Crack Messi to me, like, I think you could buy that card right now. I've been personally watching it. And that's something that in 6 months' time, that if Argentina plays well, you're going to make money on that card. If you're good at prospecting soccer, like Kendall, I know you know a ton about soccer. I think you can probably do fairly decently around the World Cup. I don't know if you make money on any sports card in the next 3 to 4 months, though. I think that you're going to need the football season to shake out. So you're going to need to at least get into the playoffs and have someone like Russell Wilson have a really good season and the Broncos be a threat to, potentially go to the Super Bowl. You don't have anything. I don't know. In baseball, there's not any prospect that I'm,
right.
super fun. Vladdy Guerrero. Like I mean, I love Vladdy. I think there's nothing but downside for Vladdy right now. So I'm probably looking 6 months is the very first time you're going to be able to make money on sports cards. And it's probably what quarterback makes the Super Bowl. And, how did you do in the World Cup market?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, World Cup's 5 months away, but really 6 months to where you would make money off of it. You got to make the right calls. I think, everything else you said. I mean, one guy, Lamar Jackson, I'll add into your discussion, just checking the pricing on him. He's been high on our sports card investment report, along with the other guys Paul mentioned. Kendall, talk to us about baseball prospecting and soccer prospecting. Any words of wisdom for John and others out there watching and listening in terms of opportunities to make money in the next 6 months or shorter than that?
Yeah, it depends on your risk analysis or your risk tolerance, because there's guys that you're going to make money swing trading if your risk tolerance is super high. And if your risk tolerance is not high, then I would say that Paul answered your question the best that he could have right there. I think the 2014 World Cup Prism set is super low population for what it was. So what I would be looking at, and this is something that Chase Krim and I, who came on last week, we've done, is go through and look for the Ronaldo and Messi 2014 World Cup and go get you 1 or 2 of those in a PSA slab. It's a nice set. It's a World Cup set. And I think Messi and Ronaldo are going to be paraded really hard through this World Cup because they are 2 active GOATs. They are confirmed 2 of the best players of all time, and this is probably their last World Cup. I could see Ronaldo making another one. I could not see Messi making another one. But they're going to be paraded. And Portugal's pretty good, and Argentina is okay. I would say Portugal has a better chance because some of their young players are phenomenal. But what I would say is now I'm not I just basically crapped on Argentina for no reason. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying Ronaldo's World Cup 2014 card is really low population for what it is. So if you could go find one of those, I think that'd be a pretty good sell. I also think you could go watch some of my card investor videos from the sports card investor stuff. I've talked about some guys that are going to be good plays in the World Cup there.
Kendall's talking about the Soccer Card Strategy show. So if you go to soccercardstrategy.com, you'll see all of Kendall's great work there. And he's got a lot of guys that are soccer prospects that he thinks could pop during the World Cup. So, and we've got Ronaldo number 1 overall on our soccer card rankings for the reasons that Kendall just mentioned, is that he's solidified and probably the least risky guy.
And he's the guy that we've talked about that's got that GOAT mentality of you are not going to beat me. Portugal could be down 2-0 at the half in an elimination game, and I still feel confident that Ronaldo could score 3 goals. It's just
is Ronaldo if Portugal won this World Cup, is Ronaldo the best player of all time?
Oh, absolutely, I think so.
Would you say Messi is now though?
No.
No,
I'm not willing to say that Messi is the best player of all time right now.
Would you say that it's Ronaldo though right now?
No.
Okay.
But I know I'm not. To be fair, I'm not sure that I have this is the best guy of all time guy.
That's like because when we talk about like catalyst, we talked about the LeBron catalyst, right? To me, that would be probably a pretty low risk, high upside play is to go in on Ronaldo. I've heard some smart people suggest Ronaldo autos and stuff like that as well, because there's not a ton of Ronaldo auto cards out there. So that's for sure I like that play a lot.
And I think Ronaldo's got that post-career swag that it's going to come out, and you're going to see Ronaldo all over even after he's done.
Yeah.
Like with the same way you saw Maradona. Well, here we go. Yeah, Pele's probably who I would put number one. But with Maradona paraded himself up because he was a partier. You know, he paraded himself all over, and people loved him just because he was in the limelight. I think Messi will hide from the limelight. Personally, I think he will go and be a family man, which Ronaldo is a family man, ironically, but like his family is also in the limelight. His kid is going to be pretty damn good at soccer, I think, you know, and so. Anyway, I would say that Ronaldo is the best 6 month. I also love the Russell Wilson play. We've talked about that on our sports page or our comments page in Facebook. Me and Paul have. But I love the Derek Carr as well. I think he's a sneaky play, especially in his division. Interestingly enough, I think the one of the lowest on the totem pole right now that could see some run if he performs is Baker Mayfield. I think if he goes to Seattle, like the reports have said over the past 24 hours, that they're pretty much going to trade for Russell. I mean, why would you not trade for Baker personally? Because you're not going to roll out there with West Virginia man at quarterback. You know, what's that guy's name?
Geno Smith.
Yeah, you're not going to have Geno Smith as your quarterback. Like, you're going to find somebody else. And so Baker's probably going to end up in Seattle, and I could see him, if he performs, his cards are at a near floor. And I think he's got a chance. You know, he's got some good talent out there. I don't know. I don't love the Baker play, but I could see that as if your risk tolerance is high and you're willing to swing for a fence, Baker might be a good play.
That's right. Andy Kaysen doesn't disagree with you. I know from talking to him on that. And so we've moved Baker up just a little bit in our football card rankings, but cautiously.
Yeah, I would say like that's not a for sure thing. Like, please do not gambling advice there.
Not at all. So guys, there's one question I want to get to from the Facebook group that came in from my post welcoming new members. We've had some growth in the Facebook group. We love to see that. But Jason Miyazaki, who we answered his question earlier, but we're going to give him another one. So he says, when grading an auto with PSA, do you always go for the dual service or just the card grade? Do you see a big difference in selling prices between PSA 10 and PSA 10 and auto 10? And I'll take it first, and then Kendall, I know you probably want to chime in because you answered it a little bit on the already on the Facebook group. So thanks for that. My experience is that, okay, so you don't pay more, you don't pay PSA more for both grades. I believe that if you think, and it kind of depends on like, so my experience is I've bought cards specifically that are like Beckett slabbed, Beckett witnessed autographs with no card grade for the specific purpose of crossover grading them with PSA to get both the card and auto grade, because I know that the comps that I've seen on the same card with a card and auto grade, regardless of the grade, go higher than just the Beckett witnessed slab. So I know that was kind of a mouthful, but like it's easier for me to answer that on the show than like type that out in the Facebook group today. So basically, if you're buying it to crossover grade it, I think that you're going to go auto grade, card grade, unless you're looking at it and you're like, this auto sucks. It's like coming off the side of the card, or it's like, it's running, you know, the letters are running or whatever, for whatever reason. Then I might say, just go card grade in the PSA slab and auto DNA certified. That would be my general rule of thumb, but you're not going to, I would say most cases go card grade, auto grade, because I think the more information that you can lock in, I think it just lets the buyer feel more confident in what they're buying. So I think that's how I see it, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Paul, do you want to go first?
I think it's somewhat, I don't know. I think it's splitting hairs, honestly. I don't know if there's one way that's going to like have an outcome that drastically performs different. I look at the card. I mean, I bought a raw, the 94 Upper Deck Mantle Griffey dual auto, which is super, super rare. And I bought that maybe 2 years ago, and it's like ballooned in value. the card had, the story behind the card is that they actually shipped them to Mantle and Griffey, and they were shipping them back and forth to each other. So Griffey would sign it, and then he mailed them to Mantle, and a lot of them got damaged in transit. And the one that I bought had quite a bit of surface damage. So what I ended up doing is I just had it graded authentic, and I didn't get the grade on the card. So it was
that is an awesome card, by the way.
Yeah, it's a really cool. They're extremely hard to find. I wish I actually had it here, but I don't to show. It's a really iconic card, and I'm super bullish on it long term. But I thought it was important to, obviously show that the autographs were authentic. Outside of that, because of the surface damage, my thought is like this thing might grade a PSA 5 or something like that. So that's like, could that potentially hurt the value of the card because, it's such a low PSA grading? So I don't know. I think it's the condition of the card matters just as much as the condition of the autograph as well.
Yeah. And like I said, I think if you're crossing over from like a Beckett, you will increase the value by getting it graded in PSA. And I think you will increase the value of getting a new PSA slab. So if you have like a blue slab with a PSA DNA cert on it, the old blue slab, I think you will increase the value by going new slab with a card grade. Even if I guess to Paul's point, like if the card looks like it would be a 5 or whatever, and it's a relatively, like, it's not like super vintage, then I would maybe just only grade the auto. But I think in general, you probably are splitting hairs, but there is a little bit of a strategy behind it. So hopefully that helps Jason and everyone else watching and listening. And so before we go to the outro of the show, I just want to say that John, I did mention Lamar Jackson. So I think Lamar Jackson, actually, he's number 2 in our football card rankings. And I believe he is a guy that you can make money on if he comes back and has a MVP caliber season, plays most of the games, and if the Ravens make it far in the playoffs. But again, to Paul's point, that's 7.5 months away. So that's about the shortest term that we think for guys like Lamar, guys like Russell Wilson, etc. And then before we go, let's make this our last thing. Sunstabber joined. Thank you for joining. And they say, hey, John, can you elaborate on your stance on Tom Brady? I think what they mean is, hey,
well, he was talking about it in the comments above it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I didn't see a comment above it, so I double checked that. But Paul Fisher mentioned Tom Brady. Paul, do you want to elaborate on why you wouldn't touch Tom Brady with a 10-foot pole?
Yeah, I like the values. Like I think a lot of people were nostalgic for the end of Brady's career and wanted to maybe hold on to Brady a little bit longer. I know myself, like I just really despise all Boston sports teams. It's just, I think that most Toronto fans are like that. So I was never a Pats fan. I had huge respect for Brady though. Like there was something about me despised the Pats, but I liked Brady because he was probably the closest thing to Jordan that we had ever seen. And you want to cheer for winners, right? I think the value of most Brady stuff shot up so drastically over the last couple of years that I just don't see the catalyst for it to go any higher. I see actually as Brady stuff as maybe having the potential most downside of any GOAT right now because it went up so high. And another thing I'd say with Brady is there are so many rookie cards. Like there's all those Michigan rookie cards. Which I find that collegiate rookie cards never perform very well. There's all of those. There's so many Bowman Chromes out there. The refractors are pretty rare. There's some cool, obviously the Contenders card is super cool, but there are so many Brady rookie cards. How do you determine what is the best one to go in? And when there's that many products that are requiring investors to put money in to keep the value up, I think at some point there's not enough demand for those cards to keep them at those prices. So I could see Brady stuff. We talked about stuff it being baked in. I could see Tom Brady stuff dropping 50% from where it is right now. Maybe not the major cards, but certainly some of those collegiate cards, I could see them coming way down to earth the exact same way that LeBron came down to earth. And, that was painful for people. So as much as I want to cheer Brady and, him being the ultimate winner, I also, I was checking Vegas odds for futures for Super Bowl. I was shocked to see that the Buccaneers are actually behind the Bills. I find that very hard to believe. Maybe that says more about the NFC than anything. As much as I want to believe and cheer for Brady to win another Super Bowl, I think the odds of it are so small, and the downside, I'd be putting money in Trey Lance or Aaron Rodgers or almost anything other than Tom Brady.
Very cool. Very interesting. Good points. Thanks, Paul. Paul, thanks for joining us, man. This was great. I know Kendall and I were excited to talk to you today. Really appreciate your insights. Thanks for being part of the community and a leader in the community that we are building. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. On behalf of the community, I know you guys put a ton of work into it, and your ability to respond, engage, to keep a really positive attitude, all of those things, I think that this is the coolest community. I'm really, really excited and interesting to see how this grows. I hope, as someone that's in the community, I would suggest share this group with your friends, share this people with smart people in the industry so that there can be more comments and, more ability for us to interact and ask engaging questions to each other. We can all learn. I think the more dialogue that you can have, the better. The better chance you have at succeeding in making money in sports cards will be driven by your ability to ask and answer questions. And for the two of you guys, I know how much work goes into this. I thank you on behalf of the community that you put this much effort into creating content. I actually enjoy the fact that there's a daily email. Sometimes it's, some people don't want a daily email. I wake up every morning, I get Wall Street Journal and Sports Card Strategy, off-season email. And I think that's awesome. That takes a lot of effort to do that though. So I'm cheering for you guys to continue to grow and, to be able to make this platform larger, to monetize it, to continue to create opportunities for yourselves as well. Because creating a community is a hard thing to do. It really is. But on behalf of everyone, I'd say thank you from the community.
Thanks, Paul.
Awesome. That means a lot. Kendall, I'll give you the last word before I go to the outro. I always give you the opportunity to say something before the end of the show. It's going to be hard to follow up Paul, but
I'm super thankful for what you do, Paul. I know that you put a ton more work than I do into it. So thank you. My little 1 minute spiel that I always love to do, that Paul gives me the opportunity to talk about whatever the heck I want for 30 seconds. Here it is. I think it's interesting that the Minnesota Twins pitching coach leaves the Minnesota Twins pitching coach position mid-season and goes to be the pitching coach of the LSU Tigers right after the end of the College World Series. I think this is something that's unprecedented in baseball. Well, maybe not unprecedented, but definitely rare. We see this happen in basketball and some other sports, but for the MLB to have a pitching coach leave an organization and not go further down into the organization as a head coach role, or even move down to become a head coach. We see a position going from a lateral position into a College World Series role is interesting. So there you go. That's something that news came out today. And also I wanted to say, Paul, we had a player or a person a couple of weeks ago talk about Vinny Pasquantino. And he got the call up today. The Royals traded Carlos during this podcast. So what am I trying to say here? Trying to get my thoughts straight. Carlos Santana has been traded to the Mariners, which is an interesting thing in general, but that it is Vinny P time in the Royals system. So
love it. Love the follow-up. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for watching and listening to the Sports Card Strategy Show, brought to you by nooffseason.com, the Sports Card Content Network. And regardless of what happens in the sports card market, we are going to continue to update the Sports Card Investment Report and you can save 20% at nooffseason.com by using the promo code NOOFFSEASON, all lowercase. And check out our partners, Market Movers, marketmoversapp.com. You can get your first month for only $1 by using the promo code NOOFFSEASON. And if you want a free t-shirt, go to nooffseason.com/t-shirt. Why not? Everybody, thanks so much and have a great day.